My name is Claire Martin. I'm the Green Party candidate for North Vancouver, and I'm running because I love North Vancouver. I love where I live, and I think we need better representation in Parliament. I think when you are a scientist, especially a scientist that's involved in the earth and atmospheric sciences, you reach a level of frustration where you feel like you're being edited all the time, and the only way to change that is to get into an avenue or a venue where your voice is heard, and that's through Parliament.
What are some of the things that really worried you about where the Conservatives have been taking the country?
Oh, how much time do you have? My biggest concern with the Conservatives, I have numerous concerns with the Conservative Parliament right now. Mainly it is their abject contempt for the process of Parliament. So irony of ironies, my strongest issue with the Conservatives is not with their environmental behaviour, it is with their contempt of Parliament. Their lack of understanding of how a true democracy works. But then that filters down, and my second real issue is obviously the lack of an environmental backbone and the fact that they appear to sell Canada out whenever they can. So I have numerous issues, but those are sort of the three that really gnaw at me.
Well, what's their record as far as being an advocate for fighting global warming?
Appalling, failing, horrendous. I mean, I could keep going on. I mean, well, they walked out of their out of the Kyoto Agreement, and they've done little since. And in fact, they've actually done the opposite. They have actively started to dismantle the infrastructure that was in place that gave us some environmental protection. The Environment Assessment Act has been completely dismantled, and they seem to have very little regard for the importance of science, evidence-based data, and a non-biased dialogue about science in Parliament. There isn't even a science advisor to the PMO. So their history is appalling.
What do you think about the bills that seem kind of sneaky, the Omnibus Bills C-38 and C-51?
Again, it's actually quite frightening. C-38 was brought in under the umbrella of being a budgetary assessment bill. And more than half of the bill, about 450 plus pages of that bill, were in fact nothing to do with the budget. They were to do with the environment, and were sort of literally unthreading what little was in place to protect fisheries and ocean, environmental assessment. And they've made sort of processes that we put in place since almost impossible to handle on an environmental level, because C-38 took away so many of the necessary oversight that means we can look at sort of new sort of policies that are trying to go into place. And I'm thinking obviously more about the pipelines and processes that are in place that require environmental assessment, and we don't even have that as a backbone anymore. Essentially, C-38, if you don't know, removed federal oversight and brought the provinces in as the assessment body, and of course the provincial scope on an environmental level is much smaller than the federal scope, so the provinces were handed a task far beyond what they're there to do. So that's my issue with C-38.
What about C-51?
51. You know what? Boy, where to start with 51? 51 is frightening even to the RCMP. 51 affects us as citizens and our ability to speak freely. It actually essentially, and I'm not sure many people realize this, it actually redefines how security is used on a political and legal way, such that bodies like Health Canada and the CRA, data that they collect can now be used by the RCMP and security forces and screened. It removes the ability for people to meet and protest, even if they do it even if it's done as a civil protest, but with police around them. It becomes a criminal activity. So C-51 affects us as Canadian citizens and takes away our ability to protest civilly against things that we don't like. It really is abhorrent if you understand the laws that define our security.
Generally, the mantra amongst a large part of the population is it's about the economy. Now, where do the Greens stand on the economy and also on energy?
You know, it's ironic that we're standing here today with the Dow and TSX dropping triple digits again. Oil has dropped below $40 a barrel, and the economy now is becoming a key talking point on the doorsteps. The Greens want to get rid of the tie that we have to oil and non-renewable resources that puts us on a roller coaster ride when it comes to a financial and fiscal level. And what we want to make sure that we're acting as Canadians on a better business level. So we want to diversify our energy portfolio, and you do that by removing yourself gradually from your reliance on oil, and you start diversifying into renewable resources like wind and solar energy, which, if you realize, is obviously an infinite source. We can even get the C-bus running on those kind of sources. Build certainty back into a businessman or a businesswoman's portfolio, so it actually is a more sustainable, more reliable economic future when you take that energy portfolio, that energy platform, and diversify it a bit. So that's where the Greens stand on the economy.
Okay, on local issues, what are some of the local issues, say, to North Vancouver that you would like to work with?
The local issues, and again, the irony that I'm talking to you this week, when we have had horrendous transport issues in North Vancouver. Anybody that's been trying to commute from downtown Vancouver to North Vancouver this week has been caught in ridiculous traffic issues from what is now being called the bump on Lionsgate Bridge. So transport's a key issue here in North Vancouver. We've got to start dealing with transport on a holistic level. We can't just say, well, we'll put on an extra C-bus, that'll solve it. Well, no, it isn't, and it doesn't. We've got to get a better leadership role going on transport, and now that the transport referendum has come back with a resounding no, there is no plan in place, and the Green Party wants to see a plan in place where we build infrastructure so that we can have thousands crossing over the water daily, easily and frequently, and in a way that is accessible to all. So we want to build a better infrastructure in place for transport.
What about the electoral system here in Canada, where it's first past the post? Where are you and the Greens on this?
You know what, it's funny because I've done some talks with school children before school broke, and I'll be back when we get back in September. First past the post is a truly undemocratic way of treating an electoral process. In fact, first past the post is not used in many of the G7 countries, and is actually pointed at by other countries as a way of continuing to have a two-party horse race where it doesn't truly reflect how the citizens of a country feel. We are adamant and have promised that as soon as we can have any MPs in the House, we will actually, especially in a minority government, and knowing how the other parties feel, switch from a first-past-the-post system to proportional representation, which hopefully would reflect how Canadians vote in a far more democratic way.
What do you say to people that are saying that the Greens are just taking away votes from the Liberals and the NDP? I guess you call it vote splitting.
Yeah, vote splitting, or what I mean, and that's another question I get, or I hear a lot on the doorsteps. Here's the answer. Whenever there's a strong Green candidate running in a riding anywhere across Canada, not just in BC, we tend to encourage people to vote such that whenever there's a strong Green candidate, we always, not often, but always see a massive increase in voter turnout. So we actually encourage people to vote, and telling people that you should vote for one of the lesser of two evils, either the Liberals or the NDPs, just to get a certain party out, is actually a form of voter suppression. People should actually be informed about who they're going to vote for, but they should feel good about their vote. They should feel like they own their vote. Voting is probably one of the most responsible duties that you have as an adult, and it shouldn't be taken lightly. And you shouldn't try to narrow the field just to get one person away. You should vote with your heart, with your conscience, with your head, and hopefully most people at that point will vote Green.
Now, didn't they run that at Elizabeth May and tell her she was just taking votes away from the candidate to repeat the Conservatives? And what happened there?
She won handily. In fact, Elizabeth May will recite these numbers constantly. I don't have them off bat, but she went into the election with around 10 or 11% in the polls prior to the night of the election, and she won that seat from the incumbent Conservative MP handily with 40+%. I've got another example for you with Andrew Weaver, who went for the MLA position, Oak Bay Gordon Head. He went in with very similar numbers, sort of that 10-15% going into the election, won it handily with in excess of 40%. Here's another good example for you, and I can keep reciting these when you go out to Atlantic Canada, just to show you that this isn't a BC answer. Take it to Atlantic Canada, and Peter Bevan Baker just won his seat as an MLA, a Green MLA in PEI, and managed to get a 90+% turnout. That's how many people come out when you have a strong Green candidate.
What's your stand on the tanker traffic, Kinder Morgan, the pipeline?
It's unequivocal, complete and utter, so that this can't be taken out of context. No to increased tanker traffic. No to increased pipelines on our coastline. No to increased infrastructure of tanker traffic and pipelines. We are the only party that have said unequivocally that we are against increasing any tanker traffic on any of our coasts and the pipelines. And we do this for a couple of reasons. We know that there is a labyrinth of pipelines across Canada right now. We don't want to increase the pipelines. We would like to see the transition from oil and crude oil, and even worse, this diluted bitumen that is now in the pipelines. We would like to see our economy transition from that kind of resource into a renewable resource, and then not need these pipelines and tankers everywhere. They're so dangerous. I mean, I actually didn't even realize that the pipelines that are in place right now, most of them are 30+ years old, and they were built not to carry diluted bitumen. They were actually built to carry crude. Crude is essentially a dirty, unprocessed form of oil, but it is relatively lubricated. Diluted bitumen isn't. Diluted bitumen, I apologize for the phrase, is literally the crud, the crap that we pull out of the ground. And it is so solid, it doesn't flow very well. So what we then do is we dilute the bitumen with a mixture of oil, sand, and a chemical mix of carcinogenic chemicals to make this bitumen fluid enough to actually go through the pipelines. If there's a leak now of diluted bitumen, not of the crude, but of diluted bitumen, we get a horrendous problem, because now we've actually got to deal with the chemicals that are being released into the ground, and we don't actually have the ability to remove diluted bitumen when it leaks into water, because that crud sinks. So part of the slick actually does float, and we have the ability to capture some of that stuff that floats, but we don't have a way of getting it off the floor of the ocean, and therein lies the real issue. We don't have the ability to clean up any form of spills these days, so we do not want to see any more traffic.
Quick little question. If
Yes.
this drought we're in and then the super blob and El Nino come together, what do you see happening to our forests and our fish here in BC?
You know what? I don't even need to be a good forecaster, because it's already happening. We've had an incredibly dry, warm winter. I was biking to work in January. We haven't had substantial rain, and I mean substantial rain, in the South Coast for essentially 3 months now. As of about the middle of this week, we have been told here on the coast that we cannot eat shellfish, BC shellfish right now, because of the rise in temperature, helping algae blooms to grow more prolific than they would otherwise naturally grow. So what looks like and is the ramifications of a strong El Nino will probably linger into winter again, which means we can look at yet another warm, mild, wet winter, which is poor for the ski lovers out there. You won't be able to ski. And it means that we won't be replenishing the slopes with latent water, which we then use in the spring. So we're already starting to see the effects of climate change, and we need to learn to live with climate change, which means these water restrictions will continue. All these mitigating facts are going to continue on. So we are living with it right now, and we're going to continue to have to live with it.
Why is this election so important for Canada and for BC?
You know, I struggle with that question because every election is crucial. It really is. And I don't want to sort of devalue prior elections. But it feels like this election, especially in light of what's going on in our climate, is an absolute turning point. It also feels like this is the election where we can really engage youth, partly through what we're doing, you and I right now, putting these kind of stories online in a form where youth will tend to go and get informed. But it's really an important election for so many reasons, because the current government, which has been in place so long, has been able to dismantle so many democratic policies that are key to keeping Canada as it was. And they're no longer in place. We've got to bring back an awful lot. Respect for our veterans. We've got to introduce a better healthcare system. We need to introduce a national pharmacare system. We need to introduce true democracy in the way that we have elections run. So it feels like there's a culmination of events that are coming to head this year, and we really, really think that this is a crucial time for people to go out and vote. And that's the most important thing I can say right now is get out and be an informed voter. Get out and vote. It's your vote to own, and feel good about your vote.
Thank you.